regarded as the Spirit's indwelling in man. Then there is theosis, a mystical union, variously regarded anywhere from a union of wills to man's nature radically changed or made godlike, deified, as some of the fathers put it. Apart from these three established types of union well known in Christianity, there are other passing experiences regarded as union with God. None of these states, experiences, or types of union, however, define hypostatic union. That alone defines the eternal incarnate unity of God and man, Christ. This union is God's eternal or heavenly oneness with his own human nature, and not God's union with the human nature of any particular human being or person. Pausing for a moment. Think again, she's writing from experience. This is what she learned about union with God beyond person. Oh, the microphone's hot. Basically, there exists no comparison between anything man regards as union with God and what is meant by hypostatic union. They are of an entirely different nature. Where hypostatic union was conceived in God from the beginning, all other unions are states or stages on the way to this hypostatic ending, for it is where Christ begins that man ends. What most sets off hypostatic union from all other types of union is the locus of this union. Where all man knows of union with God is in himself, by contrast, the hypostatic union is nowhere in man at all. It is solely in God. And given that God is infinite, means that this hypostatic union has no point of locus, even in God. The reason man knows and experiences a union or oneness with God is because he is the locus. He is the experiencer. He is the site or point of reference for his own personal union with God. Hypostatic union, on the other hand, has no place in man whatsoever. Man has no point of reference for this union, interiorly, exteriorly, anywhere. It is because this union is beyond any experience man could possibly know or verify for himself. Its true nature can only be revealed. Strictly speaking, this union has nothing to do with man, but everything to do with God. To define God's oneness with his own human nature as a union, however, is not really an adequate term. More in keeping with the true nature of Christ, the more accurate term is hypostatic oneness, instead of union, where a line can be drawn between a union of two things. No such line can be drawn between oneness. Like two sides of a single coin, there can be no separating the two sides, because no matter how the coin is sliced, there are always two sides. So as a single coin, Christ is the inseparable oneness of both sides, God and man. Earlier we said that if we could put our finger on the line between the uncreated and the created, a single line with two sides, a single coin is another analogy for the oneness of Christ's dual natures. The only problem with this analogy is that one side is infinite, the other is just man. The best analogy, however, is the Eucharist. One Eucharist, two sides, no question. The mystery of Christ is a veritable oneness of opposites. If there is a problem with the term oneness, it is the tendency to reduce it to a numerical one being, one person, one nature, the Alexandrian and Monophysite problem. Monophysite. Reducing oneness to one, however, merely illustrates the mind's need to focus on one something or someone. The mind is really not equipped to grasp the reality of oneness. To some extent, however, this is its advantage. Where people can get some idea of one or a union of two, the mind can never grasp the oneness that is the mystery of Christ. Excuse me. So where a union is putting one and one together, oneness is neither one nor two. The true nature of the incarnation was not God joining itself to human nature, but creating human nature from itself and for itself alone. This is no type of union man knows of, much less could ever attain of himself. In fact, because it is not man's and solely God's, only God knows this hypostatic oneness. It could even be said, only God knows Christ, which is why only God can reveal Christ. Left to himself, no man really knows Christ. All the fathers believe Jesus was born into this world united and one with God. Prior to Cyril's coining the term hypostatic union, however, the fathers called this union theosis, although Clement gave this state the Stoic term apatheia. For sure, Irenaeus called it theosis. Its reference was to a state of being united to God, a kind of deification of one's human nature, of being made God-like, that is. Today, we would call this theosis a mystical union, which was not, however, Cyril's understanding of hypostatic union. Theosis, man's union with God in this world, and hypostatic union, that is not in this world, are so totally different, they really have nothing in common. Where the man Jesus was born in this world in a state of theosis, yet God's human nature conceived in the essence and glory of God is not theosis. Theosis is the experience of a person, a self, whereas the hypostatic union is not an experience, because it is personless. Indeed, it is because a hypostatic oneness is not compatible with earthly existence that there has to be a kenosis, i.e., God's human nature emerging from its glorious estate in God in order to exist as a particular person in an inglorious world. We're seeing the relationship now between hypostatic union and kenosis. The previous chapter is this: the death of Christ. It's all connected. It's all related, and just hang in there, and things will start to click. Light bulbs will start to go off for different people at different times. Page 333. Thus, God's human nature, conceived in God's glory, could only be born into this world in the inglorious unitive state of theosis. As said elsewhere, theosis means one is just as aware of God as he is of himself, and in this way is aware of his own personal oneness with God. This was Jesus' awareness of his own individual oneness with God, his personal life and experiences, his knowledge, and so on. The reason he was a whole person is because he was as one with himself as he was with God. This, of course, did not make him God or make God himself. While we like to think of this type of union, theosis or mystical union, as a foreshadowing of a hypostatic union, and may even think it is the same union, only more glorious, this is not so. While theosis can be regarded as a preparation for man's final union with God, the hypostatic union is of a totally different nature. So different, it is one of those truths the mind cannot even grasp. No individual man or person is glorified. Only Christ is the glory of God in man's eternal oneness. Christ is the true nature of the hypostatic union. Christ as the true nature of the hypostatic union is man's only eternal oneness with God. There is no other eternal union possible, no other form of eternal life possible. Yet, this is the eternal life God destined for every human being, the same hypostatic oneness that is Christ. It goes without saying, the most naive notion of the incarnation is that all God did was become a visible man, or somehow enclosed itself in a physical body. God, of course, never became visible, like some God closed small g, or someone's sensory vision, nor can God ever be enclosed in matter or circumscribed. Taking a clue from Paul's reference to the Logos/Spirit as the, quote, form of God, end quote, we might think of the incarnation as God's human form, quote, emerging, end quote, directly from God's divine form, from the Logos, that is. Thus, God's human nature was conceived in God's immanent essence, but had to emerge to take on earthly existence. This